Okay? Now, if you're a Democratic Republican, you're not going to just sit idly by while the Alien Sedition Acts are being passed. You're going to have to do something about it. Well, unlike today, when something violates our rights, we can go to court and sue for our constitutional liberties. They didn't have judicial review. So you can't go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can't declare that the law was unconstitutional yet, because judicial review doesn't exist yet. We got to wait until Thomas Jefferson before that's going to come into display. So what do they do instead? Well, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison write 2 resolutions protesting the Alien and Sedition Acts. Jefferson writes the Kentucky Resolution. Virginia Resolution is written by James Madison. What is their argument? Well, they say they have the right to nullify or ignore these laws because they violate the Constitution. And since every state in the Union entered into the Constitution willingly, then they have the right to break their agreement at any time. Now, did they nullify these laws? No. Because fortunately for us, Federalists, due to the unpopularity of these laws, lose their majority in the election of 1800. They are no longer in power anymore. And the Democratic Republicans, rather than repealing the laws, all of them, they let some parts of it expire, and then other parts they do repeal. Now later on, under John Marshall, we'll take care of this problem of having laws that are unconstitutional, because the Supreme Court will establish their role as the last resort in determining if a law is constitutional or unconstitutional. That's called judicial review. And finally, news of a new peace with France doesn't make it to the U.S. until after the election of 1800. Now next week, you're going to be watching a video about Thomas Jefferson, and it includes information about the election of 1800. I think it's pretty obvious that John Adams does not win re-election. But the election of 1800, just to give you a little preview, is probably the dirtiest election in all of American history. Name-calling, rumors, scandal, all the good stuff. Okay? So John Adams is only a one-term president. He only is in office for 4 years. What does this mean? Well, obviously, some of the things that he did were extremely unpopular. Some of the things that he did were good for our country. You can't really judge Adams based on one policy. That's why I've included some of his strengths and weaknesses on this slide. You'll see his weaknesses in purple and his strengths in green. Okay? We have to consider that John Adams did the best he could. Remember, our country was a work in progress. It still is. John Adams didn't have the answers to all the problems that came his way, but he did the absolute best that he could. Now, John Adams, very worried about his legacy. He did not enjoy being president. Didn't like it at all. In fact, he hated it so much that I think probably in ranking it with being vice president, he would say it was easier to be vice president than president. And when he left in 1800, even though he transferred power peacefully, he kind of left in a snit. He didn't greet Thomas Jefferson, who won the election of 1800. He just left in the middle of the night and said, be done with it. Okay? Now, please make sure that in your notes you write down Adams' strengths and weaknesses, and remember, you can watch this as many times as you need to until you get your notes just perfect. And remember, you can't use your notes on your test anymore, so you'll need to study. Thank you, and good luck on your test.